Hi, I'm Marlene Gabauer from the Geek and Review podcast. I have Nikki Shaver here from Legal Technology Hub. She has some news to share with us. So, Nikki, what's going on?
Hi, Marlene. Lovely to be here. So, Legal Tech Hub just had a conference in London. It was our first ever conference in London, which we were delighted by.
Exciting.
It was so exciting. Some interesting things came out of it, including one of the panels in particular got a lot of attention because it was on, of course, agents. We've spoken before about how this is such a hot topic at the moment. But this focused specifically on how to define agents. Dan Hoadley of VLEX produced a very clear definition. He says that essentially an agent has to have agency. That means it must be equipped with tools that allow it to take actions and perform tasks. And it has to have the ability to reason about how and when to make use of the tools available to it to accomplish those tasks. So that reasoning element is really important. True agents are able to come up with a plan about how to accomplish the overall goal, then pursue that plan and make adjustments to the plan during execution, and they will know when the overall goal is accomplished. I think in light of all the activity in this space, it's really important for firms to understand what is meant by the term so they can see through marketing language and determine when something really is agentic and when it's not. And it's important to know because the questions you should be asking your vendor if you're dealing with a true agent are different than if you're dealing with, for example, an assistant tool. For example, if an agent is operating in a legal workflow, you may want to know whether visibility has been built in so that you can see the plan the agent creates for achieving its overall goal before it gets going on that plan, and whether the lawyer or user is able to course correct the plan before it is executed. The panel at our event actually concluded that based on Dan's definition, there are very few true agents in the legal tech space at the moment. But for more information on agents, which, as you know, we've been writing about since 2023, visit our site at legaltechnologyhub.com and reach out to us if you're interested in a subscription to our premium content, where you'll find all of our deeper analytical pieces. Thanks, Marlene.
Thank you, Nikki, for all those great insights. Welcome to the Geek and Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gabauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. And this week we have Laura Clayton McDonnell, who is president of Corporate Business Segment at Thomson Reuters. Laura's a leader driving transformation at the intersection of law, technology, and global business, which makes her the perfect guest to come here on the Geek and Review.
It's like
so Laura,
you were made for us, Laura.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Geek and Review.
Thank you so much. It's just a privilege to be here.
Awesome. So I was reading, you have a fairly recent article in Forbes, which talks about leveraging agentic AI, which we talked about here a lot over the past year or so. And you kind of spun it in the way that agentic AI can help with the corporate compliance issues. Now we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but I really wanted to kind of back up a little and look at the whole picture and ask you just kind of, how do you on a personal level like keep up and train yourself and learn the ins and outs of all the AI tools, not just the internal tools that you work with, but all of these other tools as well? What's the secret to your success on that?
And how do you know what to choose?
What to choose? I know. That's the thing. So I've got two answers to that. One is I actually do leverage the individuals in the organization. We got a product and industry specialist team. We got a lot of great product marketing folks. And they're always good for us to tap into and learn what's going out there and just keeping up to date. The second area is really our customers. They help sort of press us and push us forward because they see what's happening there. And, right now it's about leveraging technology. It's almost a requirement. Now, the third way that I do it is we've got a daughter who's
Ah,
in law. And she is always pushing me to learn more about it. She's like my source, right? What's happening in the industry. She focuses on an area of law. She's a transactional lawyer at a large law firm, and she is on top of things. So she's my secret source to make
there we
that
go. Well,
happen.
good, good. Yeah, it's just so much to keep up with anymore. As I can see that people can, may throw up their hands and go, okay, I'm going to stick to this one. One thing that I know when there's just so much change going on.
That's the challenge, particularly when like stuff keeps happening. It's like something new comes and it's like, oh, squirrel, it's like, but you have to stop and be like, is that what I really need to focus on, or do I need to kind of go the course and get, this level done first and then move to that?
That's true. That's true. Good.
Well, Laura, you've also had a pretty exciting career and fascinating journey over the years. So I think you started off, corporate securities law practice. Then you moved through the legal into sales and executive leadership roles. Uh, at some tech companies people may have heard of, like Apple, Cisco, IBM, Microsoft,
Small
ServiceNow.
companies.
So yeah, these little startups. And then you took on the role of the corporate segment there at Thomson Reuters, leading that. So, what were some of the key experiences or philosophies that kind of influenced the path that you've taken and driven you to where you are now?
Oh, that's a terrific question. When I think about it, I grew up in Silicon Valley before it was Silicon Valley. So I grew up in San Jose, and it was a farming community. And so lucky that I was able to sort of leverage all of the experiences there and the wonderful companies that you listed out. And I think about a couple of things. One is, it's about delivering value to customers. And it's almost whatever the industry might be, but in particular, when it comes to law or technology, are we delivering value to customers? And one of the questions that folks will ask me is, well, wait a minute, you moved from law to sales or business. Aren't those so different? I mean, how could it really be the case that you can be successful in both of those areas? And I said, there's probably more in common that you might think. When you think about a framework of helping to deliver value to customers, first, you got to find out what the need is. Secondly, what's getting in the way of them being able to address that need, whether it's a goal that they have or maybe it's a challenge. The third is about the solution that you can offer up. And the fourth is, are you delivering value that's quantifiable? And whether you're a salesperson or / business person or a lawyer, you go through those steps. A lawyer gets, a client sitting down and saying, look, I've got this intellectual property. Maybe it's a copyright. I'm really interested in protecting it. But what's getting in the way? Clearly, they don't have the knowledge. That's why they're coming to you. And then the third piece of it is the solution. Well, it could be a license agreement. Maybe it's a non-disclosure agreement. Maybe it's whatever the agreement might be, but you offer that up as a lawyer. And the fourth is there's value there. I've got the protection that I sought. Well, a salesperson, a business person, same thing. Customer, what's your need? What are your goals? What are your challenges? What's getting in the way? I don't have budget, or maybe I don't have the resources, or I don't have the right solution. And you come prepared with a solution. It could be, a Pagero e-invoicing, one source Pagero e-invoicing, because there's a mandate out there that you've got to comply with when it comes to e-invoicing. And then there's value there. You've complied with the law, you've avoided the fines, you've protected your reputation. So that's what you sort of, approach customers in that fashion. It makes a huge difference. I think the second area is really about embracing innovation. It just comes naturally to folks who sort of grew up in the tech industry. I think I haven't worked at any other type of industry except for sort of technology, whether it's wearing the hat of sales or wearing the hat of law. And these companies are really about technology facilitating business and helping to transform business. So I think that's pretty tremendous. And I think that the third piece of it that I've found is that it's about impact and purpose. And many of these organizations talk about what the purpose is, how to change the world, how to impact society in ways in which folks may not have thought about. And you feel, whether you're an engineer or a lawyer or a salesperson or a business person, that you're a part of the development of that technology that's going to drive that impact vision, that drive the purpose. And like I said, you don't have to be an engineer to do that. Everybody contributes to making that happen. I mean, and I think for me, those became like the reasons why I joined Thomson Reuters, to deliver value to customers, to embrace innovation, to have a purpose that resonates in order to make a difference. And I feel very fortunate to be able to enjoy all of those here at Thomson Reuters.
We had a couple on that wrote a book about basically managing your purpose and finding your purpose. Do you have your purpose written down somewhere?
I have it written down, and it's in my head. It's to live life in an exemplary manner in all that matters, with courage, curiosity, compassion, humility, integrity, and optimism. And each one of those words has a meaning, and it's all tied to my family story.
Very cool. Now I feel bad that I don't have my purpose written down.
Now I feel like I want to hear more about the family story.
I'm happy to share.
Yeah, please, if you're okay with it, sure. Let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, there's this book that Simon Sinek wrote. It starts with why, and it's about purpose. And it always starts with that. Why am I here? Why am I working at Thomson Reuters? Why do I do what I do? And values, and at some point we'll probably talk about that linkage there, but values are about the how. But it does start with why. And he found that it's really important to guide decision-making, shape your actions, build your culture by that. So when I sort of describe, to live life in an exemplary manner, that lead-in is really about my family. And I picked that word really specifically, exemplary. For me, it has two meanings. One is to be the best that you can be at whatever that you're doing. And the other is to be a role model for others. So one is sort of this personal drive to be the very best and excel, and the other is to help other folks. And I say it that way because I think about my family. My parents were born and raised in Colón, Panama, and they wanted to come to the United States. They wanted to make the American dream real for the family. And so one of the ways to do it is to join the U.S. military. My father joined the U.S. Air Force, and he got trained up in what you need to do. He learned English because Spanish was his first language. The first place he was stationed was Bermuda, and that's where I was born. I became a citizen when I was 18. And then the next place he was stationed was in Northern California. We're so lucky, right, to have been moved there or transferred there, because that sort of began the career in Silicon Valley. But I think about what they had to do. They gave up their language. They left behind family, friends. They were the first of their family to come to the United States. And I think about, what was that like? I can't even imagine doing it today. But they sacrificed. And I thought, well, gee, the sacrifice that they made, everything that I do, I need to honor that. Otherwise, why did they do it? They were doing it for us, a family yet to be born. They made that sacrifice. And that's why exemplary is part of my story. But each one of those words, I can't think of one of those words that's not a story about my family. Every single one of them. And so I start my day thinking about that. What am I going to do today to embody these qualities of my purpose statement? And at the end of the day, I reflect upon it. Gosh, how did I do? Was I a role model? Was I curious? Or maybe I wasn't as curious about the world. And sort of you use it as a way to, almost like a way to sort of meditate around that, reflect, and commit to just doing better. Because that's all my parents really want me to do, is to just be better the next day.
Well, okay, you're officially my Buddha now, and you've teed me up perfectly for the next question. So thank you for that. You're talking the things that you're talking about. Like this is all about having a growth mindset, and you hinted earlier when you were talking to Greg about being a student of your customer, which I think is fantastic. It seems that you are at a great place now, but I'm wondering, in your prior, legal training or other training, how did that initially shape your approach to business and technology, and how has that evolved, from, beginning as to, where you are now, moving into, high level sales and transformational roles?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, it gave me an opportunity to kind of think about how I have evolved in my thinking, and the order. I guess I would place the order as legal training first, and legal training brings this rigor and discipline to it about critical thinking and problem solving and how you go about making decisions. And I think it's absolutely critical that we are able to do that. And when you think about technology in all of these companies that I worked at, there were legal implications to the technology. They, drove cybersecurity concerns potentially, data privacy issues. Artificial intelligence is another piece of it, right? But they all have implications that are legal. So you can approach the world sort of with that, sort of critical thinking, that rigor and discipline. And then later on, when I was at Microsoft, and I think I had this all along in terms of my career, but growth mindset became something that was just absolutely important for success. And very luckily, I joined Microsoft when Satya became the CEO. I think he had been the CEO for maybe a year and a half before I joined. And it was all about growth mindset. There was a realization that Microsoft, you needed to be a learn it all, not a know it all, a learn it all in order to drive and develop a high performance team. So when you think, once again, legal training is sort of, isolated, maybe a little bit siloed about how you put that rigor and discipline in. Now, growth mindset is all about sort of not only yourself, but your team also. So we leverage the book by Carol Dweck, Growth Mindset, and we taught ourselves, or got trained up, to realize that if you're going to develop your intellect, your talent, you do it through effort and learning, that you actually have the ability to change that, and that challenges are opportunities. And so it allows for you to sort of, once again, sort of broaden the way that you're able to approach issues or problems. So you go from the rigor and discipline of legal training, and you put on top of that this continuous learning. That's what's in common with legal training, because there's going to be, it's going to be a dynamic environment. There's going to be new information and new technology. So you need to be open to learning continuously. And then when you add on to it, the sales and transformational piece, now you're talking about something that has this interdisciplinary nature to it. You've got law, you've got business, you've got technology. When you bring all of those together, for example, from a sales perspective, it's about learning to put the customer at the center. Developing out a relationship with that customer where you can develop that loyalty and that trust. Transformation is about, change and innovating and adapting and aligning with business goals. And when you put all these pieces together, now you have this great foundation for being able to navigate the complexity in this world. You approach it as a challenge and an opportunity because of growth mindset. You apply the rigor of critical thinking and problem solving, and you do it in a fashion that is in support of customers because of the sales aspect of it. And sometimes it means that you just have to think differently, that whatever the result is so different from the original that you have transformed your approach. And, by pulling all these pieces together, I feel like I've just been very lucky in being able to have all these different experiences that influence the approach that I take in support of customers.
Yeah.
Would you also say that being able to accept like a reasonable amount of risk, is that also part of it?
I think it is too, right? When you get the data that you need in order to make a decision, you look at it critically, and you're solving problems. It may mean sort of that trade-off. You're more likely to have that opportunity to do that trade-off, that is, to make the decision about it, when you're wearing the business hat. The legal side says, I'm going to present to you as objectively as we can. Here are the risks, here are the challenges. And then as a business person, you have the opportunity to say, okay, I think it's worth the risk for me to go down path A versus path B.
Now, you were talking about your customer base, and right now at TR, really looking at the corporate legal departments, tax, compliance departments, and so I'm not sure if that's a huge transition from the excitement of the tech world to, and then coming in to focus in on what a lot of people would kind of consider like the basic
Mm.
need work of the corporations. These are things that just absolutely have to be done. And so I'm just wondering, how what inspired you, and or I guess maybe even what inspires you when you're working with these groups on the challenges that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you think about it, is I am daily excited about what my customers are experiencing. It's interesting. This type of customer, you're going to find the general counsel and the tax department and the finance department. Sometimes folks might think about these groups as being cost centers. I mean, like, really, they're here to kind of outline the risks and they offer up advice, but they kind of go away. What are
The
they
the
really
Department
doing?
of No.
The Department of No, and like, what did they really do to drive this business forward and help us transform is something where we at Thomson Reuters are shifting that perception because we have the tools, we have the technology that will free up time for these groups to put in a sort of an AI type of or generative AI environment, the opportunity to do repetitive tasks that may be ones that don't require a lot of higher order sort of thinking to free up time so you can do just that and become a strategic partner to the business. And that is pretty inspirational in and of itself, that you can actually transform. We are transforming these roles, these professionals, to do something that they haven't done before, nor have they been asked to do. And it's because now we have the technology that can do it. And I think about what it does, this technology, it drives change. And change is there, right? Change is constant. But you need to change so you can stay relevant, so you can be competitive, so you can be innovative. And there are groups that folks would naturally go to and think that those are the groups that can do it. I truly believe that at Thomson Reuters, we can enable those professionals to be that catalyst for that driving of that transformation. So many things are happening in the world. The macroeconomic environment, the regulatory landscape that is changing, trade and tariff, and you need somebody who can counsel you to do that. The talent shortage that's out there. What can we do as professionals to make sure we have talent that have the skill set to be able to help us navigate through this complexity? There's lots of data that's out there, and new technologies are being produced all the time. So how do we help these professionals become more impactful, help to drive the transformation? Well, we have solutions. It could be on the research side, Westlaw, Practical Law, and Checkpoint, all of which is designed to help you get to the answer faster so you can free up time to be that strategic partner. Or the workflows that we have. OneSource, Pagero, HiQ, Legal Tracker, Clear, all of which is designed once again to free up time for you to do some things that really do matter in terms of the priorities of that business. We see that role, the role of the professional in the tax department or the finance department or legal department, dramatically changing. And we've got a place in that to drive that, for making it happen. I mean, I think the bottom line is customers are looking for professionals to help them digitally transform, to help them generate more revenue, improve customer loyalty. So how do you do that as one of these professionals? You got to free up time to do that thinking. Once again, to our earlier conversation, it's interdisciplinary piece of it puts this category of customer for us in such an important position in a company's growth, reduction of risk, streamlining their business, and saving on the expenses. It's pretty exciting.
So, I want to follow up on that because, Thomson has been a major player in legal tech, and I know you're incorporating AI. You've mentioned a number of tools that you have available for clients to be able, to improve their workflow. I'm curious if you have heard of clients actually having a strategy around this. So not so much just sort of looking at the tools and what the tools do, but having a larger strategy around these are what these things do, and this is how we have to change our business, our training, our staffing as a result. Are you seeing that in terms of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think what especially like the general counsel's office, the general counsel is really looking to see how can I work with this budget that I've been given and still make an impact in an organization. And a lot of it is making sure that there's time to do that kind of work. But first, you got to you got to answer the mail. And that mail includes drafting agreements and doing contract review and providing advice. And what we're seeing, especially if we use sort of Thomson Reuters general counsel's office as an example, if they can reduce the time it takes to review a contract, that could free up time for them to do more strategic work. So they've leveraged our products, and they've been able to reduce contract review time by 80% plus. We've seen a financial services company looking at the work that they do, and that is working with outside counsel and knowing that they're getting a lot of pressure to reduce the costs or reduce the expenses. So using Legal Tracker to save millions of dollars on outside counsel spend. So we're seeing that customers are using it as a way to facilitate getting to that higher order critical thinking, strategic planning. And so it may seem a little more indirect. Probably the one that's most direct, I think, is global trade management. So everybody's talking about tariffs and how important and critically it is for global trade, and using that product to do scenario planning. Not just sort of solving for the issue at hand, but being able to look around the corners, be able to predict what might happen in the future, look at option A and option B and decide where to go next. So you need that kind of guidance. You need the data being captured, analyzed, insights extracted, so you can then offer up that kind of advice that is it's changing. It's almost sort of, business changing type of advice, especially nowadays, to be able to do it at your fingertips as quickly as the regulatory landscape is changing.
Yeah. Now you've talked about leveraging the technology to kind of shift on how businesses are approaching the issues. There was a recent Thomson Reuters report which highlighted a significant growth in the alternative legal service providers, or ALSPs, and a potential what was called a bifurcation in the market based on tech adoption. So I think this is one of the areas where I think a lot of us initially thought ALSPs were going to be like a huge injection into this area a lot faster than it is. But so how do you see corporate legal departments, leveraging these ALSPs alongside their regular traditional legal services?
Yeah, it gives them options. It really does, right? And it depends on the work. So I guess the first sort of priority that we hear from our general counsel leaders of that function, the legal department, is cost control. So that's one of them. And so when they look at a law firm or they look at the ALSPs, they're looking at how much is it going to cost me? And so that's one of the top things. I think when we did our survey, our report, like 35% of GCs are thinking about cost savings, but they're also wanting it to be done right. So it's not just about the savings. How can I assure myself and give, confidence to our executives that this will be accurate and this will be right? So that's one of the trends that we're seeing. The other is they're looking to see, where do I tactically outsource? Is it a specialty that maybe we don't do well? The law firm does, or the ALSP? Maybe they're looking at something that's much more complex. Does it go to a law firm? It gives options. What if it's a repetitive task? Maybe that goes to the ALSP. Maybe it's something around e-discovery. So they're being much more refined about where the work goes, instead of, well, we don't do it here, therefore let's use an outside counsel. They're looking at cost. Is it going to be done right? What type of work is it that we might be driving? They're also looking at, am I going to get better value from it? And so once again, back on the cost part of it, but it's associated with better outcomes. So I wonder if the ALSP is leveraging AI. Is the law firm leveraging AI? And so as a way to facilitate or supplement and augment the work that they're doing. And so they're looking at, we really got to contribute to the bottom line. So billing, I guess different ways of billing, whether it's value-based or other kinds of fee-based arrangements, are going to be really important. So it becomes a little bit more complex in terms of the analysis that's done, and GC's just not the ability to be able to kind of, decide, does it go here versus another place, or do we keep it inside? So I think there's a realization that technology is just not optional. It's not optional. We got to.
I'm wondering, and the evidence may be anecdotal at this point, but in your interactions, are you who are the corporate counsel looking to that are and seeing more innovations coming from? Is it more their traditional law firms or the ALSPs coming up with innovations? I'm
Wow.
curious if anyone's talking about this or not.
That's a great question. I haven't personally encountered the conversations with ALSPs. I believe that we have some of them actually use our technology, Westlaw and Practical Law, to facilitate their delivery of services. What general counsel are talking to us about are, just we want to be able to leverage technology in a very budget conscious way where I can get accurate data, freeing up time so I can deliver these strategic things. So they're trying to sort of solve for that formula through the work that we're doing. And I believe it's going to continue to be a potential option for a general counsel to look at an ALSP.
Okay.
Yeah.
So leading transformation often involves, significant cultural shifts. So Laura, what are some of the shifts that you're seeing, and how is that impacting how Thomson Reuters, how their clients are viewing sort of the legal, the technical, the political landscape? How is that impacting decisions and how you're going to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, transformation is one of those areas that just comes up all the time when we have a conversation with a customer. They realize that because the landscape has changed, whether it's macroeconomic or geopolitical or regulatory, that transformation is going to be one of those elements of their priorities that they just need to drive. And so what they're looking at is, look, do we have a need out there? What could be driving it? And this is requiring them to have a really close relationship with their stakeholders, their C-suite, to really understand what are the key priorities that may be driving a change. Then it needs to also sort of align with the values that that company has. So whatever the change may be required, it has to be something that doesn't sound sort of dissonant from what the company's purpose is and what the values are. And as I mentioned before, engaging the stakeholders in this conversation is absolutely critical. So I think about what we're doing here at Thomson Reuters is we have introduced a new set of values. I call it sort of this evolution, really based on what we've been talking about here, where you start with the customer first. You understand why you're here. With Thomson Reuters, it's about informing the way forward. And I think about this as sort of the natural step in our transformation. A few years ago, we did something called a change program where we transform the way that we operate internally. Now this is one where we're bringing the customers in on the number one value is about customer obsession. So then you think about, okay, that's a value that we have. The need that's there is to make sure that we stay relevant to our customers. So that's a need. Okay, we've got the value. Then what do we do differently inside of our organization? Well, inside of the corporate segment, we shifted to become more customer-centric. And that meant that we needed to approach customers not with the solution in mind. Well, here's a product, it's Westlaw, or here's a product, it's Practical Law. but what is your need? What are you trying to achieve? What your goals are? And making sure that's aligned all the way through the organization into the C-suite before we act. And so taking the time to really spend time with the customer and understand their goals and objectives and challenges is a cultural change too. We changed the values, therefore we've changed the culture. And that will take time. I love what we're doing. We're making that part of everything that we do. So for a transformation, it's really about understanding what that vision is and communicating it, prioritizing it, and you're doing that often to show folks what it means to them to have the world be a little bit different because we have this. And transformation is going to be sort of, it's going to happen, throughout the course of time. You're going to transform because, oh, there's a new competitor in the marketplace, or this customer is asking for something differently. It'll be a constant. So one of the other things besides communicating the vision and ensuring that happens, developing a team that's resilient, that has the growth mindset, that is thinking about ways in which they can continue to learn. And that's how transformation will occur.
Now, Laura, we talked about the transformation, the changes with the technology. We had a couple of weeks ago. We had Raghu Ramanathan on,
Yeah.
one of your colleagues,
Yes.
and he talked about the talent, the change in the need of the type of talent that we're going to see in the legal industry, and that could go on the corporate side, it could go on the law firm side, even the judicial side. So, how are you seeing the people that you interact with, whether it's there at TR or it's your customer base out in the field? How do you see them balancing the human in the loop versus the technology that's in the loop and the changes on both sides? What's kind of how you see that unfolding?
Yeah, what a great topic. Talent, we think about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. Our customers are talking about it. They're talking about the shortages that are out there in terms of folks who are qualified to, whether they're a CPA or a lawyer. I mean, how do we ensure that they have a resource pool that is up on technology, that is trained up to do it? And so it becomes a very important topic there. When you think about generative AI or agentic AI, it's just a powerful tool. It really is. And but we remind folks, because sometimes you look at the news and all of a sudden folks think, oh no, my job is going to be replaced. I'm going to be replaced. And it's not a replacement for folks. It really isn't. What we're seeing is that the best uses of generative AI or agentic AI are really about data analytics. You got this volume of data. It's hard to assess and analyze it and draw insights from it manually. It helps with pattern recognition. Once again, with you have a lot of data there, so you can get the right patterns there, and that facilitates, well, what action you might want to take. It helps with automating routine processes. Once again, freeing up your time so you can be much more strategic. And I think that's really important, strategic thinking, decision making, but you got to balance it. It's not just about that. And the approach that we take and what we advise our customers to take is it's really a multifaceted approach. You need to look at forming an ethical review board. You've got to look at the ethics. Is it fair and transparent, the work that gets produced? Because, bottom line is for these tools, they're learning also. And they're learning because of work that you do with them. Is it fair? How do you hold folks accountable? How do you audit to make sure that there's no unintended consequences from that work? There's examples in the past where if you're not monitoring that, if you're not auditing it, if you don't have a review of it, it can, go awry, right? Data governance is especially important. At Thomson Reuters, we have a set of principles with respect to data and AI ethics. And so you have a quality control piece of it, training, because it's only going to be as good as people. In every one of these elements about what we advise the team, the human is still there. The human needs to provide oversight. The AI tool is only there to augment, not to replace. And we always say, look, if you don't know AI, you're going to be replaced by somebody who does. I mean, that's where the replacement comes in. So the human must be front and center. And I remind some folks too, especially folks who have been in the law field, is that according to the Code of Professional Responsibility, whether you have a paralegal or you have an AI, you're still responsible. You're still accountable for the work product. And that's where it should remain. So that's the balancing act that needs to occur. Yeah.
So, Laura, this has been a really, really fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. I'd like you to look ahead. So I'd like you to pull out your crystal ball for us.
Okay.
Right? And you can have it right there. What major changes or challenges do you foresee on the horizon for corporate legal, for tax, for compliance functions? Because I think this is going to be a huge hot area in the next 5 to 10 years, particularly regarding, the technology and innovation aspect. So how should leaders in these fields be preparing today for that future?
Wow, that's a terrific one. And, I think about it in a couple of different ways. Right now we're talking about using generative AI to do some things like looking at data, looking at data, doing routine tasks. But in the future, and the future is almost here, right? It seems like it's right around the corner here. How about predictive analytics? We talk about taking the data, analyzing it, extracting insights about what you currently see today. But what about the future? Can we use it to predict? Is it reliable? How do we test to make sure it's reliable? So I think about predictive analytics as being a really good area. Risk assessment, legal reasoning. And so these topics start adding in a layer of judgment. Once again, going back to our earlier conversation about the human still needs to be involved. Oversight needs to happen. But I could see where over time, generative AI and agentic AI has a level of skill that could sort of border on that judgment assessment, what we normally would expect from a human. So we still have to sort of keep that in mind, but I see it evolving that way. And we know that, powered by domain expertise and humans checking, it could be of value. So that's one area. The other is that I see it looking across the whole of the fields, not just legal or just tax or just compliance, but you have the opportunity to draw insights across legal, tax, trade, compliance. You have one question, but there's different angles to that question. You want to establish a manufacturing plant in Malaysia, you're going to have a series of questions that are not just legal. You're going to talk about, we may need to hire some folks. I wonder what the employment laws are, but what are employment policies ought to be? How should we train the hiring managers? It starts drawing out suppliers. We may have to do business with a third party. So how do we know that these folks aren't, that they're, valid for doing business with? And these become not just legal, but across the board. And I can see the insights being drawn, no matter what the sources, no matter what the content, that generative AI can help you with that. There's going to be an even more increased demand for skilled professionals. It'll continue. We already have a shortage of folks who are skilled. So this now shifts to, well, how do we prepare? Well, there's training that needs to occur. Sponsor it from your company to help folks learn about AI. As we opened up, we talked about the different ways in which you can learn about AI and keep up to speed. We're looking for our companies to help us with that, because technology is going to be able to be used for us to get ahead. And then there's sort of the qualitative part of it, building a resilient team. We touched on growth mindset. How do you develop this high-performance team that is willing to embrace the changes that occur and be able to continue to deliver and continue to learn? So with all of those pieces, I think that's the way to kind of get ready for the changes that are here and will be here.
Buckle up.
Got to get ready.
That's right.
Well, Laura Clayton McDonnell, President of Corporates at Thomson Reuters. Thank you very much. It's been great hearing kind of your personal philosophy, your professional history, and where we're going. Thank you for joining us on the Geek in Review.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here, Marlene and Greg.
And thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek in Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and Blue Sky.
And Laura, we'll make sure that we put any links out there to things that we mentioned today. But if there's, what's the best way for listeners to reach out and learn more about you or your work there at TR?
Yeah, absolutely. So folks can check out our website at thomsonreuters.com. We also have a customer conference coming up in the fall in November where you can see some product demos, get some more insights, and learn about industry trends. So I encourage folks to stay tuned for that. And please share stories with me, whether through LinkedIn, please make the connection there. I'm also at laura.claytonmcdonnell at thomsonreuters.com. I know it's a mouthful, so try LinkedIn.
I've used those Thomson Reuters emails before, so I've had to type them out.
Full names, everybody, full names. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, Marlene. Talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.